Welcome to Headline Makers on a huge European night for the Premier League leaders. Manchester City host Spanish giants Real Madrid at the Etihad in the Champions League semi-finals. Pep Guardiola is calling on his side to produce an exceptional performance. Across the city, we'll be live at Old Trafford as Victor Lindelof opens up on Erik ten Hag's appointment and Manchester United's struggles this season. And we sit down with one of West Ham's stars of the campaign. Jarrod Bowen talks about being the club's top scorer and targeting Europa League glory. All that to come, but we start with Manchester City, who warmed up for Real Madrid with a 5-star showing on Saturday.
It's late April. This is the time for winners. You can feel it in the air. And here come the champions of England. It's cracked in and it's turned in by Gabriel Jesus. Kevin De Bruyne, great ball in. 2-0 Manchester City. Camera on the front foot here and he's found a way through. The picture changes. This is Gabriel Jesus. City playing on. It's Rodri who stepped forward here. A bolt from the blue! A rocket from Rodri! Gabriel Jesus, no messing about. Ruthless from the penalty spot. A hat-trick for him. 4 for Manchester City. Gabriel Jesus, City tiptoeing forward again. Jesus! There's no stopping him! Near perfection from Manchester City. They know that Liverpool are lying in wait to rip their trophy away.
Yeah, it must be an important week of European football for our sides because we've got the European football expert Julien Laurent with us here in the studio. Julien, great to have you with us as always. I say it's a big week for our teams. It doesn't get much bigger than these semi-finals for the sides. What are you looking forward to the most?
I think Liverpool-Villarreal is going to be great. It's one favourite against a very much an underdog, but City-Real Madrid tonight at the Etihad has to be the pick of the week, even if you take in consideration the Europa League and the Europa Conference League with Leicester and West Ham. City, Pep against Real Madrid, Pep against Carlo, Karim Benzema, all of that has to be the stellar fixture.
Yeah, we'll preview that shortly, but of course this week as well there's also 2 Premier League giants going head-to-head in the league, and Olivia Bazaglo is here in the studio to look ahead to that fixture as well.
Yes, I am, Ian. Manchester United with an outside chance of getting top 4 and Chelsea with not a lot to play for in the Premier League. We're going to be focusing on the mood around Manchester United at the moment, a little bit on their new boss, Erik ten Hag. And as for Chelsea, we're going to be looking at a few of their players that are out of contract in the summer, and they are big ones as well.
Yeah, lots to talk about, even if there's not lots to play for. We'll speak to you in a little while, Liv. Thank you very much. Right, let's start our focus then on Manchester City by hearing the pre-match thoughts of Pep Guardiola ahead of facing the Champions League's most successful side ever, Real Madrid.
Well, if we have to compete with the history, we don't have any chance. They are better, so history speaks for itself. So, but we have the desire to compete against them. For us, play against Real Madrid is an incredible test and proof, and we wanna try it. We wanna try it in suffer when we are going to suffer, and be together, stick together, and when we have the ball and when we can attack, try to do as best as possible. So it would be the same if we play against, I don't know, Bayern Munich or Barcelona or the teams like they are many times in these positions. And before the last decade, we were not, almost never here. Now we start to be here, and yeah, it's good. It's good. Always will be winning, reaching the final, or reaching the final will be a good lesson for us, good learnings for us. That's for sure. And for the future will be good. Now try to be ourselves, compete good, and we have to do 2 exceptional games to reach the final. And hopefully we can do it. We can do good games, be ourselves, and it's not necessary to say how much we respect Real Madrid, how good they are, and that's all. And it's an honor. We wanna, of course, reach the final and win the final, like Madrid, like Villarreal, like Liverpool. They won it, but in the same times, I will never underestimate the fact what we have done and being here. Never ever.
He says this a lot, Julien, doesn't he? This idea that a team like Real Madrid has got some sort of advantage over City because of the history of the club, but they're not playing against the history of Real Madrid tonight, are they? They're playing against this side now, and it's his City team now against this Real Madrid side now that Carlo Ancelotti is managing, surely.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe it's to take away a little bit of the pressure in the sense that I don't think there's any favourite in the semi-finals, because if you get there, especially between City and Real Madrid, I think it's maybe to take away some of the pressure for his players, especially saying, okay, they've got all that history, but it doesn't kind of matter now. But you're right, it talks about it a lot. And I think you would have seen the game against Chelsea and against PSG, the two ties, where they clearly have something in this competition that maybe is in terms of character, in terms of never giving up. But you don't need to win it 14 times to keep going until the end and not give up either. So I agree with you. I just don't think it's a huge factor for the game tonight.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of a factor it is either, definitely. Let's speak to Sam Lee then, the Athletics City correspondent who's at the Etihad Stadium now. Hi Sam, in terms of this point then, why do you think Guardiola keeps mentioning that City haven't got much of a pedigree in the Champions League? Because surely from when he arrived to now, they have got more of a pedigree in this competition.
Yeah, they have. They're definitely building it. It's funny though, because he does say it a lot, and I do think there's some, weight in that. But he was also asked later on in the press conference, "How does this actually work in practice?" And he just kind of said, "Well, we're obviously not playing the history. We're just playing the game." So,
right.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's the fact that they just need to be careful with Madrid, because they live these moments. They know how to win it. I think if you go back to the Champions League final last year, before the game, City against Chelsea, I was thinking, well, Chelsea have been to the final before, but they haven't got a squad full of players who have been there. It's all completely new to them, but it seemed like for City, it being the first time, them being in the final, it just seemed to be too big an occasion for them. And I think you maybe need to live through these moments. You need to know that when things are tough, you can rally and not let another couple of shots or a couple of attacks forward really rock you and knock you off your pace. And I think maybe that experience and that history gives you the belief as players. If you're a Real Madrid player, you believe that you can handle this. Maybe at City, it's something a bit more new to them. Maybe that's how it manifests itself. But you're right. In many other ways, I would make City the favourite.
Yeah, and I guess maybe that is the point as well, that City does feel like the favourites ahead of this tie, like Chelsea were to a certain degree when they came up against Real Madrid earlier on in the competition as well. But they are runaway La Liga, well, the champions-elect, aren't they, to be fair? So in that sense, it's not going to be easy for City at all, is it? And it is a Champions League semi-final, of course.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Real Madrid haven't played particularly well against PSG or Chelsea over the course of both games, the two legs combined. But they're still here. Obviously, they were 3-0 down at home against Chelsea, and you think, does City see an opportunity there to be able to kill them off, because they can be quite open and they can not be on top of their game for so long? Or will they be worried with this history thing and being on top of it and being decisive in the right moments, that if City switch off for even 1 minute, like that Modric pass to Vinicius in the last round, that it can completely change the tie on its head? That's the thing with this Real Madrid team. It's not vintage Real Madrid, but in the same sense, it kind of is. It is classic Real Madrid. You need to finish them off when you get your chances. And then obviously the problem with that being, City, they're not the most clinical, are they? They can keep teams in it. After the game here against Liverpool, Guardiola was kind of regretful and said, I feel like we left them alive. And now you see the title race, you think, yeah, Liverpool, they are only just one point behind. City really did have a chance to kill them off, and they didn't. And if they don't do that against Real Madrid, and all they need is one moment, then that's the problem. So if City are on it and they're clinical, they could get a good lead. But if they're not, they are, like Jules said, as in any game, going to have to concentrate until 10 minutes after full time, just in case.
Yeah, Julian, how much of a warning were those two results over the legs in the last 16 in the quarterfinals against teams probably more fancied than Real Madrid in PSG and Chelsea for Manchester City tonight? And how much of a warning was Karim Benzema's performance in those ties as well for City?
It's just, if you open the door a little bit, even just a tiny bit, they're going to smash in and come in and then ruin your party. This is exactly what happened both against PSG and Chelsea. They don't need to play well for 90 minutes. They don't actually play well even in the league for 90 minutes. They just play well for 20, 25.
And look how far they are clear. Yeah.
And then you've got Karim the Dream. And obviously, when he's in that kind of form, you can't stop him. So City, I would think, would have a plan, especially cutting the relationship between Benzema and Vinicius, between Modric and Benzema is easier said than done. But certainly you have to put something in place so that Benzema can't have an impact on the game.
Even for a man dubbed Kareem the Dream, this has been a remarkable campaign for him, though, hasn't it? I mean, not even just in the Champions League. 39 goals in 40 appearances, all competitions, let alone 13 assists. It's incredible, isn't it? How has he managed to do that at what is probably the latter stages of his career?
He turned 34 at the end of December, and putting the best season of his life, really, because this is what it is. I think the armband, which is carried the most this season because Marcelo's hardly played. The importance that he feels like he has in that team, which he's always enjoyed. And the fact that he's so fit, he's incredibly fit because of the lifestyle that he has outside of the field, the pitch, all the recovery that he does, all the invisible work, as we call it, in the gym, and all of that is there. And that's why, and the confidence with him is massive.
Yeah, and he's rolled on week to week, hasn't he, with those displays this season, certainly in this competition. Sam, coming back to you then, Manchester City have got their own goal machine after the weekend, haven't they? Gabriel Jesus. Will he even start, though, later on? I mean, what a test that would be of Pep Guardiola's resolve to leave out a player who's just scored 4 goals.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously with Pep, I think like a lot of managers, you pick your team based on who's hot, who's got the right feeling, who's got that confidence. And I think particularly with Gabriel Jesus, if his confidence is high, you can be pretty confident that he might give you an extra, 4, 5, 10, 15%. But at the same time, Guardiola may have had his plan. He may like Mahrez on the right-hand side to do something specific, and he wouldn't want to change that. And Jesus is an interesting one as well because he didn't start in the Premier League for 3 months, and then he came out of the cold and started against Liverpool and did very well and scored a goal. When City played at the Bernabeu a couple of years ago, he played a kind of left wing-back role and was great. He was probably the man of the match. Guardiola can do this with Jesus. He can leave him out for so long and then he can bring him back in. I wouldn't be too surprised if he started tonight, but just because he scored 4 goals against Watford, it's no real guarantee that he's even going to get one tonight. And that's kind of the eternal debate with Jesus. But I suppose you can be pretty sure that he'll have a solid performance, but if he's going to give you a goal, that's another match altogether.
Yeah, and of course there's a debate about his future now at Manchester City. There's lots of speculation about Arsenal and other sides being interested in him. Is he playing for his future in that sort of in that case, or how do you read the situation, Sam?
Yeah, well, I think playing for his future kind of suggests that it's City pushing him out the door. Now, I don't know what City are thinking at the moment, but I know with Jesus, I think it's just comes down to the fact that he's got a year left on his contract. He doesn't play that often. As I just said, he didn't start in the Premier League for 3 months, then he played against Liverpool. So if it comes to weighing up your future now and thinking, what do I want to do for the next 4 or 5 years? Okay, I'll probably go somewhere that's going to gamble on me, that's going to pay some money for me and tell me that I'll be part of this project, whether it's number 9 or on the right or on the left or wherever it may be. I think it makes sense for him to think, actually, I've got a good option here to move somewhere else. And that's what he's considering. So in terms of playing for his future, I don't know. I think his future may lie elsewhere. And I think, he'd be happy with what he's achieved at City. But to go and get more playing time and, of course, to try and get in Brazil squad for the World Cup, it's probably a good opportunity for him to go and try and do that. But I suppose if he did feel ideally he wants to be here and he wants to play every game, then, if he goes on a run to the end of the season and makes himself undroppable, I was going to say as a number 9, then that would help. But obviously, he probably won't be the number 9 next season. That'll probably be somebody else.
City don't have number 9, Sam, anyway. We've not spent all season talking about that either, have we? In terms of Jesus, Julian, where do you see him continuing his career? Do you think that he's going to hang around at City and just get the opportunities that he's got so far, or can you see him moving on? And if so, who do you think would be interested?
I think if there was no World Cup to play in halfway through next season, it would be very clever for him to stay and run down his contract and then have all those options next summer, the summer 2023, and decide where he wanted to go on free. The thing is, like Sam said rightly, he has to play if he wants to make the Brazil World Cup squad. And it's a highly competitive squad as well. Yeah. So you know that if you don't play, as much as Chichi might love you or not, then if you don't play enough, you're not going to be there. So it's a tricky situation. I can see him leaving, and I think with just 1 year left on his contract, there's a bargain there for, I don't know, the club, Arsenal or clubs like that in the Premier League or even abroad, in Spain, in Italy, to get a really good player, a young player who can play very versatile, can play different positions, very good at pressing, counter-pressing, he likes defending. He's a really good boy. There's nothing that you don't like about Gabriel Jesus, apart from maybe the fact that he could be more clinical. But when we look at his stat, they're actually pretty good.
Yeah. And he's just scored 4 at the weekend
just
as well.
for the weekend. So I think there's a bargain there. And I think if I was City, even with Haaland potentially coming, I'm not sure if I would let him go, to be fair.
Yeah, it's a situation to keep an eye on, certainly. Sam, let's go back to the match tonight then. What's the mood like around the Etihad Stadium ahead of this game? Because in a sense, it's a bit of a break from the pressure of the Premier League title race as well, isn't it? Yet more wins for both teams at the weekend.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of City fans today say this is the one game they've got this season now, which isn't the final. You know, in the sense that when they play Newcastle and they got Leeds away at the weekend and got Villa last game of the season, all of these games they need to win, or they feel like they need to win because they presume Liverpool will win the rest. So this is a kind of a break in a way, obviously a very high pressured break. But if they lose tonight, you know, they've still got another chance next week. So yeah, there's that. And also for me personally, I feel like the Atletico Madrid game, given there was Liverpool after that, and then, you know, another Atletico Madrid game and another Liverpool game, that felt really tense. Maybe because I thought it's going to be so difficult for City. I had a feeling that, you know, Atletico would obviously dig in and make things very difficult. Whereas I feel like they can play football tonight, and they're very good at playing football. So for me personally, obviously not as a City fan because I'm not one, but for me personally, it feels like there's slightly less tension here than with Atletico Madrid. But, you know, I could be wrong. It certainly happened before.
Yeah, there's a little while to go to kick off. I'm sure the tension will build. Sam, enjoy the match tonight. Thank you for joining us on Headline Makers as well. That's Sam Lee, the Athletics Manchester City correspondent. Right, Liverpool, of course, have to wait until Wednesday for their Champions League semi-final. Let's hear from Jurgen Klopp, who was speaking earlier ahead of the first leg at home to Villarreal.
Yes, we need a big game. We need to be on top of our game. I need to be on top of my game. So before the game and then during the game, the boys as well. So, but that's completely fine because it's semi-final, Champions League. If that would be easy, then something would be really completely wrong. And that's why I can't wait. Honestly, even in this hectic schedule and playing all the time and this highlight here and a week with City, United, Everton, but if you need a next game to be 1000% in, then bring on Villarreal in a Champions League.
A serious build-up, I think we can call that from Jurgen Klopp, because I think if we're talking about City being slight favourites against Real Madrid, Liverpool are huge favourites against Villarreal, and he can't afford his team to take them lightly, can he?
No, like Juventus or Bayern Munich before.
Exactly, Speaking about warnings for City,
exactly.
Liverpool have got the same,
Yeah, and I spoke to Arnaud Danjuma yesterday for ESPN, and he said, you know, you don't beat Bayern Munich and Juventus the way we did, as in Villarreal, by luck or coincidence, because he said Unai Emery had such a strong tactical plan and we just executed it so well, and we would try to do the same against Liverpool, and we're so confident because of the fact that we beat Bayern and Juventus before, and Bayern especially because there are similarities in the high defensive line, for example, the attacking power that Bayern have, that Liverpool have. They're not as good as Liverpool, but certainly there's a few similarities. So yeah, if you're Liverpool, you take this game, you don't take anything for granted and you take it very seriously. Yeah, considering in the semi-finals and the season that Manchester United have had, it's remarkable that their 2 defeats in the Champions League this season have come home and away against United, against Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's United initially, and then Michael Carrick was in temporary charge for the match
Villarreal
away in
played
Spain
really well.
as well.
If you remember, Villarreal played really well in those games too.
Yeah, despite the fact that they lost those matches. I mean, for Liverpool then, looking ahead to this match, how concerned will they be that Villarreal are a bit of an antidote to what they bring to matches?
Yes, that's a very good point. And I think, again, Unai Emery tactically is right up there with the best coaches in Europe right now. And I think he can put a plan together. There's a few doubts over Gerard Moreno up front, for example, to play with Danjuma.
Yes.
But usually they're well drilled, they're well organized, they can defend. We saw that against Bayern Munich. They're pretty good at defending and not give you any space, which is a problem for Liverpool. I would think they have a Thiago plan to limit his influence on the game, maybe even a Trent plan to limit. I know it's a lot of
You need
plans.
a few of them, don't you?
But yeah, I just don't think it would be that easy for Liverpool.
No, it's interesting as well. There's quite a few ex-Premier League players in that Villarreal squad to keep an eye on. There's a few sort of less glamorous names who haven't done so well in English football and have gone and thrived over on in Spain for Villarreal. Let's focus in on Liverpool just for a moment as well. Then, what sort of a warm-up was that Merseyside derby? Maybe quite a good one if Villarreal are going to be resolute and sit and defend, because Everton did exactly that, didn't they?
Yeah, and you're right. And for an hour, it worked really well in terms of not giving them any spaces. I mean, we see the first goal here, which obviously changed the whole game, but don't give them spaces. you don't need to have a lot of the ball. They can have the ball if they can't do anything with it. And I think there would be a lot that Unai Emery and Villarreal players would take. Trust me, they were all, Danjuma was saying, they all watched the game on Sunday afternoon because Villarreal didn't play this weekend, which might be a factor as well, because it was the Spanish Cup final. So apart from Barcelona, there was no other teams played. So it was a weekend of rest for Villarreal, and will be certainly fresher than Liverpool, you would think, after the derby.
And what about the title race then? I think you've been tipping Liverpool a little bit, haven't you, to make up the ground to Manchester City, so tight at the top. I suppose they'll want a result tonight to mean that they can maybe rest players in that second leg, which maybe gives them a bit of an advantage over City heading into the domestic matches.
Yeah, that's right. They did that against Benfica. And in a way, it worked. At least they certainly didn't lose any ground, and they put a bit more pressure by going top for a few hours. They would play first at the weekend, where Newcastle, when City would have to go to Leeds, for example, and they can then put pressure on City and take the lead. It'd be fascinating. I still fancy them because of the momentum and because of the clutch players that they have in their squad to just nick it at the end.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. There's no doubt about that. How many times I've said that this season. That's it then for part one on Headline Makers. That's Tuesday and Wednesday dealt with. But on Thursday, there's West Ham's semi-final in the Europa League to look forward to against Frankfurt. And how important will this man be? Jarrod Bowen. We'll hear from him next. Stay with us. Welcome back to Headline Makers. West Ham are just 2 days away from one of the biggest European nights in their history as they travel to Eintracht Frankfurt in the Europa League semi-final. David Moyes' side are enjoying a superb season, with one man in particular having the campaign of his life. Yeah, no doubt it's been a great season for Jarrod Bowen so far. Vishali Bhardwaj, our reporter, joins us from the London Stadium. And you've been speaking to Bowen just earlier on, Vishali.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was a bit of a change of scenery for our interview was actually conducted here at the London Stadium, because the West Ham team were training here earlier on as they tried to acclimatise ahead of that huge Europa League semi-final first leg clash against Eintracht Frankfurt in 2 days' time. Now, a lot of the focus of the interview was on that game, but also the London derby clash at the weekend against Arsenal. I asked Bowen, how is he feeling ahead of what is going to be a huge week in West Ham's history? Here's what he had to say.
Games coming thick and fast now, aren't they? So we've got, obviously, as you said, a massive one Thursday night, but then also a massive game on Sunday as well. So it's one game at a time, but our focus now Thursday night, which is going to be hopefully a special night again. I think the nerves will be, actually on the day and getting to the stadium. Then it'll be the nerves, and then it'll just be hopefully excitement.
A huge night ahead for everyone connected with West Ham, no doubt about that. I mean, how good do you think Bowen has been this season? We saw those clips a moment ago of all his goals this campaign. He's emerged as a real important player for David Moyes' side, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And David Moyes is a big fan of Jarrod Bowen. I mean, he's got 9 Premier League goals and 8 assists so far this season. He had a little bit of a slow start to the campaign, I think it is safe to say. But since the turn of the year, he has been scoring consistently, even though he did have an injury around March time. And that was ultimately what kept him out of the England squad at that time. But he said, look, he's just trying to go to the next level and then the next level. So my question to him in the interview today was, well, is the next level trying to break into that England senior setup? Here's what he had to say.
I watch my game backs every game, and even in training, if we do a bit of finishing drills, I'll watch the finishing back with one of the coaches, and we'll watch the games, and it might be just off the ball stuff and positional play rather than when I'm on the ball, and it's just about learning from each game. I think it's better to see it with someone rather than watch it on your own, because I think you can not find what you're looking for.
Did you ever watch your games back with David Moyes?
No, not with a manager. No, I don't know, because if I'd done something bad, I don't know if I'd hear the end of it. But it's one of the coaches that take an interest. So just do it with them and watch it from there.
Julian, would you like to watch West Ham back with David Moyes?
I'm not sure either.
Bowen doesn't want to.
Yeah, especially if, like he said, if you make something wrong, you don't know what the reaction will be. I find that fascinating. Some players never watch them again.
Yeah.
Even not training session or games or anything. I like it that he does. I think he shows a thirst for learning, for improving, seeing what went right, what went wrong, do the right thing again, not do the wrong things again, and improving that, and off the ball as well. I find that fascinating because I think it's a good mindset to have.
Yeah, Vishali, what sort of a task then have Bowen and his teammates got ahead of Thursday? Like I said before, it's a huge occasion against Frankfurt, but how good are they?
Oh, it's going to be such a tough game. I mean, look, West Ham went to France and they beat Lyon 3-0 in their quarter-final second leg, winning that tie 4-1 on aggregate. And that was such a big and impressive result away in France. But Eintracht Frankfurt, in their quarter-final game, they knocked Barcelona out, but they went to the Camp Nou in the second leg and they beat them 3-2. Now, of course, you saw in that match just how noisy and passionate the Eintracht Frankfurt fans were. So you can imagine what kind of an atmosphere they were bringing in the away end. So it is a tough game. And West Ham, of course, they lost to Chelsea at the weekend. I think it's safe to say with 6 changes made by David Moyes in that game, they still played pretty well. They just took their eye off the ball in the last couple of the minutes in that match. They haven't actually won in the Premier League since early April when they beat Everton here at the London Stadium. So the results of late haven't been that good, apart from in the Europa League. And I think that just shows you that David Moyes and his side have switched their priorities to the Europa League. So even though they haven't won in the Premier League for nearly a month, this team will be ready for that game against Eintracht Frankfurt in 2 days' time.
Yeah, and Julian, you could probably understand that, considering they've only got 3 matches now in between them and a place in next season's Champions League, as well as getting the silverware, of course, of winning the Europa League. How impressed have you been with West Ham's European campaign so far?
Massively. I really have to say I didn't expect them to do so well in the league, where it's still a very decent season in the Premier League.
Absolutely, yeah.
And in the Europa League, I always thought the squad was too thin to be able to compete so well on the two competitions. I thought not recruiting in January was a big mistake for that. Even just some squad players, we see now how difficult it is for them defensively with Dawson is going to be suspended at the weekend, and then the injuries to Ogbonna and to Diop and to Zuma. So I always thought that January they missed the trick a little bit by not signing anyone, and yet they proved me wrong because they're still in a really good position in the league. And then this semi-final, and now really the road has opened up now that Barca are out as well.
Yeah.
Frankfurt are going to be really good, and they play with a back 5, which is always a bit tricky to play against, especially with West Ham, who don't actually create that many chances. They're more of a physical, on-the-counter kind of team. Against Frankfurt, that might be a bit difficult, so it'd be a very fascinating contest.
Yeah, an interesting matchup in that regard. Certainly, it feels better to face Frankfurt than Barcelona, even though Frankfurt have just knocked Barcelona out, but work that one out. What sort of shape are West Ham in then, Vishali, for this match?
Well, of course, Craig Dawson was sent off against Chelsea, so he won't be available for the Premier League match against Arsenal. But I think, as Julian mentioned, the big issue for David Moyes is that they have so many defensive injuries. I mean, of course, Angelo Ogbonna is out for the rest of the season. The big question is whether or not Kurt Zouma and Issa Diop will make Thursday night's match against Eintracht Frankfurt. Now, if they don't, the big question is, does Declan Rice start in defence? Some people thought that he might well do that against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. In fact, he didn't even start the game. It was Mark Noble who started in midfield. It just remains to be seen how David Moyes shuffles the pack at the back if he doesn't have Kurt Zouma and Issa Diop available for that game.
Yeah, and usually at this point I'd be asking, the sort of question, will David Moyes have one eye on the match at the weekend and his team selection, etc., etc. But I don't think there is any sense of that now, is it? It seems like it's full steam ahead in the Europa League, and whatever happens in the Premier League is fine.
Yeah, and that's just a decision that David Moyes has clearly made in the last couple of weeks, with West Ham not winning and that gap between themselves and Arsenal now growing to 8 points. He has shifted all of his priorities onto the Europa League and the fact that they do have just 3 games to win in order to not just lift some silverware, but then to secure Champions League football for next season. He openly admitted it before the game against Chelsea. When he was doing his pre-match interview, he said, yep, I've made 6 changes, and it is because of the Frankfurt game in mind. So it'll be interesting to see if if he puts out his strongest side against Frankfurt, which I'm sure he will, whether or not he then rests some players against Arsenal in what is a London derby clash. It's going to be a fiercely contested game, I am sure. But the players who did come into the team for the game against Chelsea at the weekend, they didn't do so badly, did they? They didn't score any goal at Stamford Bridge, but they did put up a fight. So I think David Moyes will go with a strong lineup in 2 days' time, and then perhaps look to rest some of his key players for that game against Arsenal on Sunday.
Yeah, that performance has at least given him something to think about. Certainly, Vishali, thank you for the update from the London Stadium. Yeah, Julian, it's amazing that David Moyes is now in a position where he can make a decision like this and he's not questioned at all.
It's a great luxury to have, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a measure of how well he's done there as well, isn't it?
Very true, you're right, that's very true. And
power that he's got.
The Europa League is tough, we always say, which is true. You play Thursday and then you play on the Sunday in your league. Often you have to travel quite far away, and with a small squad like they have, because it is a small squad, it has been really difficult, and yet they've done extremely well. Well done to him. The priority is fully on the Europa League now. Certainly those 2 games back to back now, because there's not even a week of rest between the 2 semi-finals. So they have to go for it. It doesn't matter what they do against Chelsea or Arsenal. You try to get a point, like they tried to do at Stamford Bridge and almost succeeded. It would be the same against Arsenal, and then they can fully focus on the second leg and make it to the final.
Yeah, it's an historic moment for West Ham, isn't it? You can understand that, certainly. Right, as promised, it's not just West Ham in action on Thursday. There's also a Premier League fixture to look forward to as well, and Liv's here to preview it.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Ian. Manchester United against Chelsea. And Chelsea come into this game in good form, having beat West Ham 1-0. A last-minute goal from that man, Christian Pulisic, after Jorginho missed a penalty. But that strengthened their grip on third place in the Premier League table. And I'm sure their fans will now be looking ahead to the summer and what potential transfers the club might make in order to make them title challengers again. But one man who definitely won't be involved is that man, Antonio Rudiger. Now, the German has been a huge part of Chelsea's defence, especially under Thomas Tuchel. As you can see, he's made over 120 Premier League appearances, keeping 52 clean sheets. But he will leave Stamford Bridge when his contract ends in the summer, as confirmed by his manager on Sunday.
I fought hard on a personal level, but we have this kind of connection since day one, and he was like, he deserves my full support because he delivered an incredible performance until today. He was so reliable, so it was a give and take, and I know that he is very well aware of it, and I'm just happy to be that I had the chance to coach him and the chance to have him in the team, because he was nothing else but brilliant until today, and the club did as well. We had offers, we had big offers for him, and the club tried everything, but since some weeks we cannot fight anymore because we have the sanctions. We cannot adjust, we cannot continue, so yeah, it is what it is.
Now, as well as Rudiger, Andreas Christensen is also out of contract at the end of the season, with the Danish centre-back reportedly close to agreeing a move to Barcelona. He hasn't been quite as influential as Rudiger, but he's still been an important part of the Chelsea side that has emerged under Thomas Tuchel. He's made 92, so nearly 100 Premier League appearances, keeping 28 clean sheets. Now, if Rudiger and Christensen are to leave, these are the remaining games that they could play for Chelsea. The main one that, of course, sticks out is the FA Cup final there against Liverpool on the 14th of May. Before that, though, of course, is a big trip away to Old Trafford to come up against a Man United side who probably cannot wait for this campaign to end. Right, to get the Man United perspective, our reporter Damien Johnson is live at Old Trafford for us today. Damien, what's the mood like at Old Trafford then, ahead of a big, what usually is a huge game against Chelsea, albeit with both teams maybe not that much to play for anymore?
Yes, this would, in previous seasons, be a title decider, wouldn't it? But there's a fair amount of doom and gloom in these parts, tempered, I suppose, by the optimism of a new manager arriving in the summer. But it's been a pretty poor season, hasn't it, all round. Confirmation, not confirmation, but almost confirmation that Manchester United won't be playing in the Champions League next season. They're 6 points adrift of Arsenal after they went down 3-1 at the Emirates at the weekend. It was another mixed display at best, I think you'd have to say. I've been speaking to Victor Lindelof today, the central defender from Manchester United, at the training ground a little earlier today, and he was reflecting on a season of disappointment.
It's been a difficult season for us. We're not where we wanted to be, and we haven't performed at the level that we want to perform at. I think the biggest problem for us has been the lack of consistency. We haven't some games we can perform very well, and then the next game we're not performing at all. So I think that's the biggest problem for us, that we haven't found the right consistency throughout the season. And of course, us as players, we take responsibility for that, because we're the one on the pitch. But I mean, there's a lot of things that we need to improve, and a lot of things that goes around it as well.
That was Victor Lindelof speaking there. Damien, can you put your finger on just exactly what has been going wrong for United over the past couple of weeks?
Well, inconsistency, as Lindelof was saying there, kind of typified really by the performance against Arsenal at the weekend. It was an improvement really on the game against Liverpool a few days earlier. Didn't really need to do much to improve on that performance. They were terrible at Anfield. But yeah, they offered a bit of threat going forward, but at the back, defensive mistakes yet again. Positives you'd take, well, they worked the goalkeeper a bit more, in Ramsdale having to make a few more saves. Ronaldo got his 100th Premier League goal. They would be positives they'd take. But so poor at the back. They were missing Harry Maguire. He was left on the bench after his struggles this season and off-field problems as well. It's been a wretched season if you're a Manchester United fan, and I think for many of them, and probably for the players as well, although they wouldn't admit it, they probably can't wait for it to end.
Yeah, and Damien, of course, the big news coming out of the club last week was the appointment of Erik ten Hag. How the squad reacted to this news?
Very positively. He comes with a very impressive CV. His 5 years at Ajax have been trophy laden. They're going for the Dutch title again, and I think for many people, certainly fans, they can't wait for him to arrive. They need a clean sweep really. There's talk of a clear out of players. A lot of players are leaving, of course, on freeze because they've come to the end of their contracts. People like Paul Pogba likely to go. Others like Lingard, Mata, all come to the end of the contracts, likely to move on. And there is talk today of a clear out of players who are still under contract that Ten Hag perhaps won't fancy. People like Eric Bailly, like Anthony Martial, and others, Alex Telles and Wan-Bissaka may move on as well. Only one or two of those likely to attract a fee, but that will give Ten Hag a bit of manoeuvrability in the transfer market to bring in the kind of players that he wants to play in the style that he wants to adapt going forward. But certainly the Manchester United players welcome his appointment.
I know who he is. I've seen Ajax play a little bit, so I think it's a fantastic appointment. I think he's a good manager who can do great stuff here. So I think everyone is looking forward to work with him, and obviously me too. So yeah, I think it's going to be a good season.
And Damien, we've seen Ralf Rangnick change up his team, switch up the defence. What sort of team do you think he's going to put out for this game against Chelsea on Thursday if they want that last top four spot, which obviously they're outside chance now, but they have to win this game, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. A must-win game for Manchester United here on Thursday against Chelsea. In terms of team news, well, it'll be interesting to see whether Harry Maguire comes in. He was left out, and on form, he wasn't really deserving of a place anyway at Arsenal at the weekend. Fred, the Brazilian midfielder who was injured a few weeks ago at Everton, is hinting on social media that he may be fit to return. He's got a problem with his hip. They miss his drive and energy in midfield. He's been one of the few bright sparks on occasion, I think you'd have to say, for Manchester United. But yeah, it's kind of win or bust now. Lose that and any talk of a top four spot completely out of the window now.
Thank you very much, Damien. That was our reporter Damien Johnson at Old Trafford for us ahead of Manchester United against Chelsea on Thursday. And Ian, a little bit of positive for Manchester United fans. Chelsea have not won at Old Trafford in the Premier League since 2012-13 when Sir Alex Ferguson was in charge.
It's incredible, that, isn't it?
It's a great stat.
Unbelievable stat. Start of the day from Olivia there. Brilliant. Thank you so much for bringing us up to date on the situation at both clubs. Lots to talk about, like we said, despite the fact that there's not much to play for on the pitch. Damien was talking there, Julian, about the future of some of the players in the Manchester United squad, particularly those out of contract. Of course, Paul Pogba, a player that you know well, is one of those. What do you think his future is?
I think he will have a few offers. There's already a lot of clubs interested in him because he's a free agent, because I think a lot of clubs still see the potential in him, and yet he's been very inconsistent at United.
And Rangnick's more or less confirmed that he's going, isn't it?
Yeah, I think this is clear. He's not going to renew his contract over there. I think he wants also a new chapter. He was, I think, a bit disappointed by how the 6 years have gone. I think he's partly to blame for it, of course, because he should have done better. I think the team around him was never maybe up to the level that he hoped that it would be. I don't know who's to blame the most, but it's a shame. I think that he's ending that way. Him injured, probably not going to play again this season. I think PSG, Juventus, maybe even Real Madrid are still clubs who will be very keen on Paul Pogba.
Okay, sounds like there'll be a bit of a queue then, to be fair, for Paul Pogba in the summer. Right, okay, time for another break then on Headline Makers, and after it we'll head north to talk Newcastle, who are heading north in the Premier League table, up in the top 10 for the first time in 4 years. We'll focus in on that man in particular. That's next. Welcome to the final part of Headline Makers. Time to focus on Newcastle now. Eddie Howe's side are in the Premier League's top 10 after 4 straight wins for the first time in 4 years. Our reporter Andy Sixsmith is waiting to speak to us at St James's Park. Andy, set the scene for us up there then. Are Newcastle fans finally happy?
Well, to put it simply, Ian, it's one of the great Premier League escapes, and the Newcastle fans, as you can understand, are delighted. Newcastle were bottom of the table on the 1st of December. They're now 9th and are closer to the European places than they are to the relegation zone. It's an incredible turnaround, and it definitely is a glimpse into what the future might hold here on Tyneside. But I tell you what, let's deal with the present day for now, shall we? Newcastle already have more wins in 2022 than they did in the entirety of 2021, and the Newcastle supporters in the city centre put that down to one man. Eddie Howe, as I'm sure you can imagine. He's changed, he's transformed the culture, transformed the city, transformed the players, of course, the likes of Bruno Guimaraes, who I'm sure we're going to be speaking about this evening, the likes of Dan Burn, Matt Targett. They all came in January and have performed very, very well in the last few months. But players like Emil Kraft, Miggy Almiron, John-Joe Shelvey, Joe Linton with 2 more goals against Norwich on Saturday. They really epitomise the change at this club, don't they? They were once criticised by the supporters. Well, they're now idolised, and it's not gone unnoticed by the new owners here at St James's Park either. The chairman, Yasir Al-Rumayyan, he was here last week for that 1-0 defeat of Crystal Palace. He took part in a kickabout on the pitch after the game, even took part in the dressing room photo after the game as well. And I think that gives an insight into just the change of feel, the change of atmosphere around Tyneside right now. One thing, though, that hasn't changed, Ian, that's Eddie Howe's mindset. He still says that Newcastle, they're not mathematically safe. They should be, shouldn't they, in the next game or two. The Newcastle fans, from what I saw over the weekend, celebrating in the city centre, they certainly already think Newcastle are safe. But I tell you what, if they're celebrating like that with Newcastle 9th in the Premier League table, what on earth are they going to be like when the day finally arrives that Newcastle win a trophy?
Who knows? One day we'll perhaps find out, Andy. I'm sure we'll be speaking to you about it. You mentioned him a moment ago, you teased it. They've got a new hero up on Tyneside, haven't they? Bruno Guimaraes. I mean, how good has he been over these recent matches to deserve this praise?
Well, I remember Ian speaking to Bruno Guimaraes literally a day or two after he became a Newcastle United player, and 2 things struck me. 1, he barely spoke a word of English at the time. 2, his first statement was, I want to win the Champions League with Newcastle United. Fast forward just a few months and he conducts pretty much every single interview in English. I'm led to believe he actually takes English lessons every day, and also, more importantly, he's dragged Newcastle United out of the relegation zone and into the top 10. This is a seriously impressive, mercurial, intelligent, and dare I say it, world-class player that Newcastle United have on their hands. Ever since he came into the starting lineup here at St James's Park, he leads the Premier League midfielders in terms of goals scored, tackles made, and dribbles completed. And when you think of the calibre of midfielder in the Premier League, well, that's some accolade, isn't it? And it goes without saying, he is idolised, like you say, by the Newcastle United supporters. Every goal he scores, the chants of Bruno go up. Every time he makes a tackle, Brazilian flags are waved amongst the supporters. Every time he steps foot into the city centre, he's mobbed by Newcastle United fans. He's only 24. There's plenty of improving to be done, I think, for Bruno without going too far ahead. But the Toon Army hope that that improving is done right here at St James's Park. And if it is, Ian, I know this might be a bit of hyperbole, but Bruno Guimaraes could well become one of the finest midfielders ever to play for Newcastle United.
Blimey, it is early to go on that, but he has been impressive, Julian, hasn't he? Has he surprised you at all about how quickly he seems to have settled in the north of England?
No, not at all, I have to say. I'm not trying to say that I told you, but I did tell you.
You did tell me, I remember you being sat in that very seat. Yeah.
Because he was one of the best players in Ligue 1, and I think to come over to Newcastle, seeing how quickly he adapted to France in general, the language, the culture, the football, everything, I had no doubt he would do the same at Newcastle. And where I think Eddie Howe and Jason Tindall, his assistant, have been very clever is not to throw him straight away.
No, they took the time on that, didn't they?
Remember, we discussed it together in the sense that first he sat on the bench, he watched, he learned, he observed. Then there was a few minutes there and there, and then he started that goal against Southampton, that flick, that sort of like, return flick kind of thing, I think was a big boost of his confidence. And after that, he's never looked back. And when you see the quality that he brings to that team, he's a wonderful, wonderful player.
Yeah, he's been flicking, prodding, poking, chipping his way to that status already up at Newcastle. Andy, what's the target then for the rest of the season for them? You know, they're looking up the table now finally, aren't they? Certainly. How high can they get?
Well, if you speak to Eddie Howe like I do every single week, Ian, the target is to be mathematically safe. And like I said before, I think that will take place over the next game or two. And it's a good job Newcastle are practically safe. Because if you look at the last 4 fixtures, Liverpool here at St James's, Man City away, Arsenal back here at St James's, and then Burnley, of course, fighting against relegation on the final day of the season at Turf Moor. But I tell you what, a year ago I would have said Newcastle would have gone into this range of fixtures fearful. This new Newcastle side will go into this range of fixtures optimistic instead. Yes, they're playing probably the best 2 clubs in world football right now in Liverpool and Manchester City over the next 7 to 10 days or so. But Eddie Howe will have drummed into them, especially ahead of this Liverpool game at the weekend. This is your opportunity to make history. Newcastle have never won 7 straight home games. They could do that this weekend against Liverpool. I know a lot of people might look at it on paper and say, well, that's highly unlikely. But Eddie Howe will have drummed into these players. It's all about incentives. Incentives to make history. Incentives, like you say, to finish as high up the Premier League table as possible. And incentives as well to lay the foundations for a bright future ahead. So, yep, Liverpool a daunting task. Newcastle will quietly be aiming in the top 10 of the Premier League. And who would have thought I'd have been saying that 6 months ago?
Yeah, and what a story it'd be if they won at the weekend as well. Andy, thank you for bringing the positivity in the sunshine at St James's Park. Brilliant. Well, Julian, I think it's pretty clear now that Newcastle aren't getting relegated. Who is?
Well, I think Norwich will go down. I think Watford will go down as well. They had opportunities, they missed them, and then for me, it's all between Everton and Burnley. I'm really worried.
Not Leeds?
No, I think Leeds will just be okay. Although they play, as we said, they play City at the weekend and could lose that. And in case Burnley and Everton win, it would be tight again. But I think they might, with 5 points clear of Everton, even with Everton a game in hand, should be okay. I'm really worried about Everton, I have to say.
Okay.
Because of the fixture list and because they're just not playing well and not defending well at all.
Yeah, Burnley, intriguingly as well, 6 points behind Aston Villa and have got to play them twice between now and the end of the season.
True.
So maybe even Villa could get dragged in and maybe being a little bit fanciful with that. In terms of the picture then down there for Burnley, there was huge surprise when they took the decision to sack Sean Dyche. Not so much for the results that Burnley have had this season, but for the mood really at Turf Moor. It was a bit of a gear shift from what the stability had been over the decade preceding that, and the timing as well, it being on a Friday so close to a weekend fixture. But when you look at 7 points from the 3 matches, caretaker manager Mike Jackson's doing a great job, isn't he?
Incredible. The draw against West Ham, then the 2 wins. And some big wins as well. Not big in the way they played or anything, but the character that they showed.
Got to get over the line,
exactly.
Yeah.
To go and grind out a result.
That said, this is great play, isn't it?
This is really good play. And to be fair, they've played some really good stuff under Mike Jackson. And maybe, and again, we're not in the dressing room, but maybe the mood was like, okay, you need to change something. And maybe some of the players wanted the shackles off and to be able to go and maybe express themselves a bit more than under Sean Dyche, where everything was quite structured and it was one way and no other way, and it's been like that for 9.5 years, and maybe that's what they kind of needed.
Yeah, it's been reported that the players simply got sort of bored really of the sound of the same
Always
voice
the same thing,
all
exactly,
the time. Yeah, which I guess you can understand, but it's been a secret of their success, the stability and doing things the same way in some ways. Everton, you said you were concerned for. I mean, that was the real headline really of the week, was them dropping in to the bottom three. And this result, obviously, against Liverpool, perhaps felt inevitable given the gap between the two teams at the minute. But to be in this position now, facing up to the final furlong of the season, is a huge concern for Everton, isn't it?
It's huge, and it's okay. Maybe on another day, VAR, the referee, gives a penalty on Anthony Gordon, and the whole thing is okay, maybe, but maybe not as well. And certainly, it doesn't count anymore now. And I think what you look at is who's going to score the goals and how. And how well can they defend?
Also, I think an issue with Everton maybe is the expectation. And I know they've been in this position now for quite a while this season, but certainly heading into this campaign, none of those players would have been expecting to be in the bottom three heading into the final month of the season. And it's dealing with that as well, isn't it? Burnley clearly are up for the fight and maybe expected more to be in this position. That's something to combat, isn't it?
Definitely. And same from Lampard. Lampard has never been in a position, he's a young manager to start with anyway, but to fight against relegation, to have the sort of mindset what you need to do, and I also think that could be a problem.
Okay, this is the running then for the three sides who we think may be in contention for the final relegation place. Anything about that makes you think one way or another, Julian?
Well, I think, again, if you look at Chelsea, they will have to play Leeds and Everton, so there could be a bit of a referee into this battle. You've got Brentford as well, who also play Everton and Leeds. Leeds have City to come. We said Arsenal and Chelsea, those 3 games in a row are huge for Jesse Marsch, who's doing well and better, and they certainly defend better again than the few last games under Bielsa. But it's tricky. It's tricky for all 3 of them. I still think that the momentum is more with Burnley and Leeds than it is with Everton.
Yeah, it's a huge concern, isn't it, Goodison Park? What a story that would be if they were to drop out of the Premier League for the first time. Well, Julian, it's been a pleasure to have you as always on Headline Makers. Thanks for being with us. Thank you for watching at home as well. What a week we have in store yet again for our Premier League sides. Enjoy the football and we'll review it all on Headline Makers. See you next time. Bye-bye.